Buhari talk. I am for everybody. I am for nobody.
No, you not talk
I
at me.
this one too now in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
Keep quiet. I am in this
The
one
only
in another way.
statement,
I am
the
for
only area,
everybody.
the
I
only
am for
area
nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement. Now only appointment. When you are talking about project, a project spell as God. If you say you need to spell as God. What does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in the time of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like the man, I'm ready to say that when our leaders are the people, you know, I'm telling you, when they get the position, why una no come win APC?
A very good morning to you. Thank you for staying with us on Global TV. This is Global Morning. We're on Star Times channel 276 in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. I'm Uyag Mofwebe. Thank you once again for staying with us here for the program. Wonderful conversation up ahead. On the program this morning, I have a very brilliant gentleman who will help us do justice to that one. I'm sure it's a great day already for you. It's a wonderful Wednesday. Midweek, as we know, is here, and we hope you will make the most of it, all right? As usual, we're going to have a cursory look at the papers this morning, meaning we will look at the headlines for you across half a dozen newspapers just to give you an insight into what the news is like today, whether it's in politics and the economy, or whatever it is that does interest you, and that way you are also able to pick up copies of this paper for yourself and then read up details as you journey into a promising day. So quickly we begin with the Nation newspaper. This morning, the Nation newspaper has got a big headline. I should even say a screaming headline there for you. It says what Tinubu should do on security by IG, DSS, NSA, Soludo Uzodimma. Let's see what it says about them. Canvas State Police, Energy. All right, Sanwo-Olu, governors must be accessible. Of course, that's not negotiable. Governors have got to be accessible. I'm very sure that's the reason they were engaged, or rather they were elected in the first place. Poll petition, INEC president-elects oppose live telecast. People have asked questions as to the necessity of live telecast. I mean, what difference does it make after all? They argue whether or not the proceedings, all right, telecast or broadcast live, but then we understand that that's an issue that needs to be resolved as well going forward. Okay, tariff rate. Some persons have said that it wasn't actually U.S. citizens who were killed. They were two policemen and two members of staff of the U.S. consulate here in Nigeria. But in any case, lives have been lost, so it's something we need to pay attention to. All right. Okay, so we go to a different paper now, the Independent, or the Nigerian Independent. All right. The Delhi Independent, I should say, has a big story as well. You take a look at the Delhi Independent today and see what stories or what headlines we've got there. Senate OK's independent candidacy makes it difficult to fly. All right, so the question is, would that make it impossible, or at least near impossible, for people to just cross carpets at the snap of fingers? All right, is that what we have achieved with this story? We are watching to see exactly what the details are. Then, of course, Senate seeks inclusion of NAS presiding officers in national security cancelled. That's coming from the Daily Independent newspaper this morning. And when you look at the Daily Independent, you still have several headlines there, but we're just going to look at a couple more before we move on to the next paper. FG's recklessness plunged Nigeria into inflation. That's according to Soludo. All right, telcos subscribers in dilemma as use of harmonized short codes begin. A North experiencing self-imposed educational backwardness, Minister. All right. Okay, Nigerian Tribune is our next port of call. If you take a look at the Nigerian Tribune this morning, the big story there is about the president-elect. It says Tinubu to open talks with G6, Yari, others. All right. Dilemma over Barao, APC, NWC, Akpabio, 40 senators-elect meets. Senators, not APC, NWC will decide Akpabio's fate, Adamu tells Stability Group. All right, then you still have quite a number of riders there. North Central yet to speak on Nance Zoni, Kwara governor. APC's Zoni template unfair to North negates federal character principle. Yari, Tinubu meets with Kwankwanso in France. That story actually came through yesterday evening about Tinubu's meeting with Kwankwaso in France. All right. EFCC operative dies during scuttle with colleagues over suspect seized items. We understand that case is now with the Nigeria police, and we're sure investigation is already ongoing. Naira redesign grounded bandits activities in the north. RY youths are the ones saying that. And then again, we look at the nameplate, just above the nameplate of the Tribune, the Nigerian Tribune. It says, Oyebode, Kokori, Asaju to Tinubu, how to deliver good leadership, governance, right? Buhari presidency, review. So much to review about the man's 8 years, the president's 8 years in office. All right, so let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper this morning. Says pressure, lifestyle, increase high BP among Nigerian youths. Okay, treatment costs 1.22 trillion naira monthly for 76.2 million Nigerians living with ailments. Court remands Kuti over alleged assaults. Resident doctors begin warning strike today. Set May 29 deadline for FG's intervention. Yari kicks, Akpabio leads over 40 senators to parley with NWC. May 29, Tinubu's inauguration sacrosanct, says Afenifere as Ohaneze disowns plan to participate. Manufacturers flee excise duty increase, call for suspension. And on that note, we'll take a look at the Daily Trust for you quickly. Let's see what stories we've got there. On the Daily Trust, a big headline here on the Daily Trust now reads, real reasons Tinubu met with Kwankwaso ex-Emir Sanusi in Paris. That's coming to you on the Daily Trust this morning. Okay. Offers NNPP leader ministerial position, urges consultation. Still on the Daily Trust this morning, as former Kano governor converses with ex-CBN governor. Okay, Northwest deserves Senate presidency. All right, then just a little below the nameplate of today's Daily Trust. What do you have? It says National Assembly approves independent candidacy for elections. And North in self-imposed educational backwardness. Adamu, U.S. Embassy staff shot dead in Anambra. Such a sad story. Such a sad story. Our last port of call today is Nigerian News Direct. Okay, let's take a look at Nigerian News Direct now and see what we have there. 5-day warning strike, uncertainty as FG dares resident doctors. Issues warning, threatens no work, no pay. Of course, no work, no pay has become a sick song, whether it is the resident doctors going on strike or it is ASU calling for a warning strike. But whatever the narrative may be, regardless of the back and forth and the bickering here and there, we just want to see a functional healthcare system. Something that is not only accessible, but it is on demand, and then it is of quality that can compete with anyone else anywhere in the world. All right, that's all headlines from Nigerian News Direct this morning for you. On agriculture, Abiodun hosts Egypt's biggest conglomerate. Nigeria needs 350 trillion naira for development plan. Revenue shortfalls pose fear before incoming governors. Osinbajo offers focus on ICT. And that's the much we are bringing to you on the papers this morning. We are hoping and trusting that we've been able to help you carve a path as to what the news is about today, and of course where the narratives are heading, regardless of what the subject matter is. We're taking a quick break here on Global Morning. I'll return shortly, and then you'll meet my guest and we'll head straight to the discussion. Don't go away.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you know, talk
I
about
am
me.
in this
No,
one too now in another way.
how are you sure, sir?
I am in this
The
one
only,
in
that
another way.
statement,
I am
the
for
only area,
everybody,
the only
I am
area
for nobody.
the only area where Buhari defeat for that statement, now only appointment. When you're talking about project, the project spell at God. If you say you need to spell at God, what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in the time of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you say project, I'm a whether
Global Television, building the nation. Global Television, building the nation.
We talk about the Civil War, but we seem to ignore the fact that it was the manipulation of ethno-religious sentiment that eventually boiled over into that tragedy.
I think this is a negative part of what we're experiencing.
I am for everybody, I am for.
Thank you everyone for staying with us on Global Morning here on Global TV. We're on Star Times channel 276. Do well to follow us on our social media platforms. The handle is at Global TV AG, and of course we can follow all the conversations right there on our social media handles. I'm joined by a gentleman who will help us just beat this morning's discussion into context and help us create perspectives as well. I'm joined by no other person than someone who understands so much around the public affairs space and is going to be talking to us about cost of governance in Nigeria and how that impacts our ability or otherwise to be able to make an impact in especially critical sectors in this country, regardless of what political party is in power or who exactly is the leader or president at that point in time. Ademu Musa Adams. I'm very careful to pronounce those three names. All right, thank you for coming on the program this morning. We do appreciate you for taking the time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Excellent. So you are passionate about issues around governance, but then there's a very pivotal element in the narrative, which is the cost of governance itself. There are people who argue, quite frankly, that we're spending too much in terms of governance, even though, yes, we agree that we have voluntarily adopted the American model of democracy. Are we biting more than we can chew?
Thank you. My pleasure. Issue of governance, it's key to any development.
Apparently.
And asking if we're biting more than we can chew, of course we are, no doubt. How else do you explain that 70% of your revenue goes to service recurring capital, recurring expenditure, and just 30% is left to deal with over 200 million people who need health facility, education, and otherwise. But I would say that the fact is this: we won't stop saying, we will not stop saying, but the fact is, will they really listen to it? Are they listening? Does it make any effect in the call to see that it's not really well with us? Now, what is the cost of governance? What is even governance? Let's take Nigeria, for instance. We are supposed to have the executive, the legislators, and the judiciary. And this is equally broken into different states that will have close to 36. We have 36 on the federal capital. And all of this is to be run by one budget. Are you with me? So now, if we are making 1 naira, the implication is this: 70 kobo goes to pay salary.
That doesn't seem to make much of economic sense. That's the point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It doesn't just go to pay salary. It goes to I simply put, maladministration, misappropriation. If it's turned the other way around, there could be better life. And adopting a model of the American system is one thing. But we are not American. We have a peculiar problem. We have a peculiar terrain. We have our challenges in development. We're not productive. So, permit me to take it.
It's fine, because I was just going to push you on something else.
Permit me to take to answer you directly as we're keying this communication. Now, what is governance? That's money spent on administrative processes. What are we administering? The people, their infrastructure, their well-being. It means for this administration to be proper, every child should be in school. The fundamental human right, for which I said every child must be educated.
Access to education.
Access to education. Access to not just free education at the basic. So if we in the end adopt a model of you have close to about 44 ministries, 44 ministries. There's about 26 ministries and about 44 ministers. And this goes into their convoy, their aides. Are you with me? So the adoption is not the problem. The problem is the management. And you have one particular governor having close to 1,000 aides. You have another having up to 200 essays, even up to 1,000. What do you need them for? You see a convoy in Lagos, you see a convoy in Kogi State, you see a convoy in and these are expenditures in the in the process of providing for the people. So if you are spending 70 naira to manage 30 naira, is there any sense in it? I don't know if you understand me.
So you're saying all of this to say we're in a bad place socially and
economically. We are in a bad place.
But is that difficult for government to to appreciate, to recognize that, look, yes, we are in the woods now, but we can do X, Y, Z to get ourselves out of this, if you like, dungeon that we are in, that sort of thing. But why is it taking so long? Some people say it's a systemic problem. That's why it's difficult. Is that rational? Is that a valid argument?
Systemic problem, yes. Then what forms the system? What is leadership? What is governance? Provision, life, security, safety, provision, management. And simply put, management is taking something in a condition and returning it in a better condition with better value. It means it requires skill, knowledge, and the political, what do you call it now? Will, power to do this. But fundamentally, we have problem with even the knowledge. I don't know if you agree with me.
So there's some knowledge gap, right?
That's a knowledge problem. Once you don't know a terrain, how do you
operate?
Let's go back to what we have fundamentally, the foundation. How does a government come to be? It has to come through a process, either autocratic, either democracy, whatever it is. There had to be a process. But in our case, it's a democratic process. Let's evaluate the democratic process that brings in people on board. How did it even happen? How was it managed? Simply put, between 1999 till now, over 720 billion is what has been invested in the process of electing those who govern. Compare this cost to the output. You will, of course, realize that from the beginning till now, the process of electing those who govern us has not even taken the effectiveness of ensuring that the right number of people at the right effectiveness with available money are able to freely cast this vote. There's no vote that is not marred with a whole lot of violence. Why? So if the cost of even bringing who governs is that high, how do you expect the cost of governance to equally be low? It means there's a problem with the process. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So what this simply implies, let's take a look at the just concluded election. According to available report, 355 billion is what it cost us to run this election, including the Kogi state, the Imo and the Bayelsa state.
Okay, the off-grid election.
Yes, right. Yes. Put that because that's what brought in the additional 50-something million that was supposed to be added to the 305 billion that should run this. This includes the the voters register process, the process of going from
and all of the cost in between.
The cost in between, the logistics and otherwise. Put all of these together. It then means that if the 96 or 93 million voters who were registered were to have voted, it means the cost for one person to successfully cast a vote without death, without gunshot, without fear, without tension, without suffering, it's about 3.18 million, so to say. However, in the recent concluded election, just about 28% of the total registered voters were the number of those who voted. So if you divide that by 355 million across line, it means all through the election, it should cost 14 million naira for somebody to vote. That's outrageous. If that's your business, will you run it that way? I don't think you will. So simply put, the process of even bringing in who should become the one who governs.
It's already burdensome.
It's already burdensome. Now, there's a template that is already existing that has been adopted. Time is constant, that we know. But people who live through time are dynamic, so to say. So it means at every point in time, innovative creativity become relevant to how we manage policies.
I think for a second that we probably should begin to look at possible solutions. However, we've seen situations where, for example, the president comes out and then he says, I'm cutting my salary by 50%. And then you see members of the House of Assembly, the Senate and, National Assembly, the Senate and the House of Representatives saying, well, we're also cutting ours by 50%. Is that far-reaching enough, or is this just, for want of better words, a drop in the ocean?
The truth of the fact is this. Passion, even desire, just without the prerequisite skill, you know what it represents? It's equally another disaster in motion. How do I mean? Do you know the effect of this bad governance over the years? Don't look at it from one angle. Don't look at the money that is even spent. Not look at the aids that are given. Don't look at that. Look at what it would have cost emotionally to the downstream, the people who are to be governed. This cost of governance has an underlying motive, not because they do not know most time, but because there's this self-interest, self-gratification that underlie our polity. You know, politics recently is becoming the most lucrative business in Nigeria since 1999. Whoever goes into politics goes with the intention of cashing out. So you find out it's becoming a do-or-die affair. Nobody gives a damn what happened to the next person. People burn houses, people kill people, people eliminate people so they can emerge. They spend money. They give money to compromise situation. And over time, once this is done, what do you see you find out they have? You find out you begin to have those who help them do this dirty job, becoming part of those who form their SAs. Are you with me? So on the long run, you have a collection of people who are behind someone who fit into where they do not fit into. They have assumed a social status that they have not actually internally commensurate to begin to live within society, and eventually
roles they don't have capacity.
Roles they don't have capacity, and that's what I call a corruption of incompetency.
So let's talk about. In computer science they say garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
Right. Then you're asking yourself, how do we start to clean up the process through which people emerge to lead, whether it's at the executive level, at the legislative level, or even at the judiciary level, because you can't give what you don't have. Once we miss it at that fundamental level, at that very elementary stage, it means the consequences will be enormous for the country, maybe across generations even. So how do we begin to rework that process that produces those who lead the country across different levels?
Revolution.
What kind?
Of the mind. Revolution of the mind. Because it's become a mindset problem. The mindset is, I'm getting in there to cash out. Are you getting me now? So, and if you take the system too, by the time you build a computer system, you equally build a firewall to protect the functionality of the system.
Right.
And because this has become so flexible, don't forget the laws. There's no amount of word that can express what the heart feel at any point in time. So that's why the law is having that provision, because it's made for us. As we run through it and we see this doesn't work for us, there is every need to find the right way to tie this same thing to the law that allows for that fair play equity, balance in the recurrent expenditure and the capital expenditure. There have been no balance from the beginning. So if you ask me again, I'll still say, if the governor comes and say, I cut my salary, the House of Rep comes and say, I cut my salary down, that still hasn't solved the problem. There's a problem to work on the people within, on the ground. It has to be a policy and a program that is to bring in a reorientation to pass through the mind. There could be deep programs to re-educate the people on the process of how this works. Because the truth up till tomorrow is, state by state, every state has its peculiar problem.
Sure.
And there's no state that does not have the problem of high cost of governance. Peter Obi, so to say, when he came in as the governor, he finds a way to find how he could cut that down. Well, if he successfully cut it down, what effect did it make? When he left office, did it continue? Was it established? Was it sustained? Or it was just a momentary thing? Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure. They look at it as the people need it, so to play games with us. And God help us.
Okay, so while we're waiting for that help to come, all right, there's also the belief that, well, you can't talk about dealing with cost of governance without, first of all, addressing one fundamental element, which is corruption. We've heard time and again about fighting corruption, fighting graft, and so on and so forth. And then you also hear how that corruption is fighting back.
Yeah.
Then we have those who say, well, corruption is not peculiar, it's not exclusive to Nigeria. There are other corrupt countries across the world. Is it realistic to say we want to fight corruption in a bid to address high cost of governance? Can we fight corruption?
How did corruption come to us? How did
it came to us.
How did the water get into the pumpkin? What was the design that established this corruption? It's a systemic design. How? With all apology, we are still the milking ground for the Western world. We don't produce. And we have all it takes to produce. And little self-gratification has always sold us out. So the system was equally designed in such a way that that element that can bring that unity is stolen away. The seed of corruption was sown in us. And as it grows with time, it's becoming a bigger monster. And until we're able to remove and eliminate this monster, we can't go forward. And this is what we must do conscientiously. It means it's down on you and I to educate, because this corruption, don't forget, they have a system here. The elites got so disinterested in politics, in coming to take space with leadership. Not just that they are disinterested, because each time they come to space, the same elimination process is what pushed them back. Let me refer you to somebody who wanted it. I call him my hero, Abad Macaulay. No, from that beginning, where this corruption was sowed even by the white world, they were taking lands of landowners from Lagos, and he took his time to want to fight this as a person. Do you know, allegations were alleged on him to discredit him. And this has become the particular system, the particular tactics that our politicians adopt. Now, you find out that power is absolute. The autonomy is with the state governor. And the state governor has the total right to do A, B, C, and D.
Within a state.
Within a state. The immunity covers him. So you have a federal system where you have 36 states with 36 governors with their power and autonomy to do and undo to some extent with immunity. Then the 37% is the president who oversees the entire thing. And what do? Some of these offices are created for selfish purpose, self-gratification, playing around the law. So that even keep increasing the template that is already creating an increased cost of government. Take, for instance, about 3 or 4 years ago in Kogi State, the Ministry of, what do we call it now? The Office of the Auditor General of Local Government. You have the Auditor General of the state. So what do you need?
Which is statutory.
Which is statutory. And what is the business of the state, if not the local government account, who do not have autonomy and he deals with? So what is the extent of creating, are you with me now, another office?
Like a duplication.
Like a duplication of the Auditor General's work. Because what do you manage? What are you auditing generally as a state government, if not the local government? Are you with me now? So how do we know this? They do have this kind of motive that in view, and the law and the systems allow this, and nobody is doing anything to stop it. So they capitalize on it, take advantage on it, and look, it's called spinning.
We're just going to take a break now, so we can also spin around a little. Okay, so we're taking a break quickly, everyone. We're back shortly to just wrap up this conversation this morning. Stay with us.
We talk about the Civil War, but we seem to ignore the fact that it was the manipulation of ethno-religious sentiment that eventually boiled over into that tragedy.
I think this is a negative part of what we're experiencing.
No shooting anymore.
We must come together as Nigerians.
We are brothers and sisters. Nigeria first before your politics.
We're all engaged in trying to keep the country united.
For a nation to develop, conflicts must be minimized.
Peace and stability is extremely important for all.
My hope and prayer is that the Nigerian of our dream will be achieved.
Global Television, building the nation. Global Television, building the nation.
We talk about the Civil War, but we seem to ignore the fact that it was the manipulation of ethno-religious sentiment that eventually boiled over into that tragedy.
I think this is a negative part of what we're experiencing.
No shooting anymore. We must come together as Nigerians.
We are brothers and sisters. Nigeria first before your politics.
We're all engaged in trying to keep the country united.
For a nation to develop, conflicts must be minimized.
Peace and stability is extremely important for all.
My hope and prayer is that Nigerian of our dream.
We appreciate you staying with us on the program this morning. So I'm just going to continue the discussion with Ademu Musa Adams, public affairs commentator, this morning around cost of governance and why we need to cut it down very significantly, and that should happen as quickly as possible. I was going to just push you on one more issue, all right? In recent years, there are people who have been canvassing part-time legislature, believing to a very large extent that would help to minimize cost of governance. Do you share that sentiment?
Oh, well, I don't. Why? Part-time legislation, okay? But what is even wrong with looking at, let's take Kogi State, let's take Nasarawa State, let's take all the 36 states as case study. Kogi State, for instance, you have 3 senators to represent 3 senatorial districts. In that same state, you have a governor. So what's wrong with a state having, outside the governor who governs the state, having just one representative of the state?
At the federal level?
At the federal level. What does this do? It doubles more like a liaison officer of the federal and the state. So it equally helps the issue of unity. I don't know if you understand. We keep talking unity. So why do you unite in division? Why do you need to have, I am representing this, the governor represents the entire state. Yes, that's the state. He works for the state, he governs the state. So why not have just one representing the entire state? Then you solve this problem of unity and you have this relationship of a bond for developmental process. for the state, ideally, all things being equal. Why duplication? That give us too much of this bureaucracy. That give us one of the reason. The reason we keep having high cost of governance is not far-fetched. You have a representative, the senator. The senator needs to compete with someone to become a senator.
Right.
The senator has his group. We will work with him, will work for him. And in recent time, these groups are people who will come out to fight to take the box. You find out someone who just stole a box last election becoming an essay in the next election. So if it's just one and the whole state come around and it's just the same way as strong as going around the whole state to familiarize with every part of the local government, being a part of them, understanding them, it means even having more work representing them at the federal level, bringing federal projects everywhere. It reduces a whole lot of things. And the cost is apparently this. I think the law should be made that no senator should have more than 2-3 convoy at any point in time, because he doesn't need all the convoy.
But there's the concern that that again may not see the light of day, because in this same country we have also canvassed the need to patronize locally produced items, all right, whether they are items of clothing, whether it's technology, maybe devices, for example, or even essentials that families need at home, and so on and so forth. So if we can't do that, I wouldn't know how realistic this would be. But then, how do we begin to make political offices, whether by way of appointment or election, far less attractive? Because there's the argument about the oil money, because there's so much of oil money to go around. People are very attracted to political offices. How do we make it less attractive so that when somebody wakes up tomorrow morning and says they want to become your senator, they want to become a member of the House of Representatives, or they even want to be a member of the State House of Assembly, it has to be something that has been motivated, or if you like, spurred by service, by the love of country. How do we make that happen?
Okay, now, as a teacher, I was teaching from eight period of 40 minutes per day. Check the children's, the pupils' book, mark the book. And in the end, my salary at level 16 then, as of 2015, was about 110,000.
Level 16 as of 2015?
Yeah, 110,000. So equally broken into unit per day. It means I'm earning an average of about 3,500 per day. What a laborer earns in the market. Now, the salary of, according to a viable record accepted by the Senate President, he said the senators about 1.5 and 1.3. This is less their allowances. Don't forget, before becoming a senator, you buy your clothes, you live in your house. So this idea of this so much that has been given for so less that they will do until it changes, we won't have help. But the problem is, how will it change? Where the same who are to decide if this happen are the same who benefits from it. The lawmakers. I don't know if you understand. So it has to be us coming together, not from the top, but from beneath, to begin to say what kind of nation we want and how we want them. But unfortunately, those who are supposed to join in this discourse are not informed. So we keep talking. We've been saying there's the 5 developmental goal that's been designed a long time, as far back as 1978, after the Civil War. And it's agreed that the most, as a matter of fact, who was there then? Is it Albani Koku? As a matter of fact, it is compulsory, it's imperative that the Ministry of Education must make this value taught, this developmental structure taught as a goal that must be pursued by every Nigerian. From then till now, we've not achieved it. Why? Because we are more of saying the policy like we adopt. But we are not good at working to make the policy work, because our process of bringing those who do the work have us having round pegs in square holes and square pegs in round hole. It can't work. It will malfunction. And then malfunctioning is what we're having that are giving birth into the street we have today. I call it the dark room behind our street. What informed the behavior of who are on the street. So those who needed to know to begin to agitate, not agitation by carrying woods and the rest, by sending communicate, by coming together. Like if you see the answers, if it was a program and a project that was done on that intellectual basis, it would have been able to hold water from ground. But you see, from the beginning till now, there has been agitation. And each of these agitation is putting it at the base of the people, still suffering, making the whole nation becoming ungovernable. Agitation here and there and everywhere.
As of today, you realize that there's a big problem, very fundamental one too, with how we manage public funds in this country. Yeah. People are accused of stealing public funds, whether it's misappropriation or even outright theft. Yeah. The next thing you know is they get what you might want to call a slap in the wrists. Yeah. And then ends it, and they will move to the next person. The same cycle continues. Do you think, quite frankly, that if we were to have stiffer penalties for people who pilfer public purse, we probably will get it right, or at least do far better with our public funds management process?
Fortunately, those who steal the public funds know they are stealing public funds. Those who help them steal this same public fund, the few who help them steal, are those who are in place to protect it. I don't know if you get what I mean. Let me give you an example. I was privileged to work for about 3 contractors in at the Itakbe Warri rail station. Now within these, there's supposed to be about 12 substations. And before the structure could come up, there was a need to do the water recirculating system that amounted to about 58 million, 70-something million, depending on the terrain. Now, ideally, are you with me, sir? Ideally, from the bill of quantity that I designed for one of the contractor, 14.5 million was to finish the whole job. How do you explain this? Are we saying that within the system where you have qualified, certified engineers and bill of quantity surveyors, was that they lack the knowledge to do it, or they refuse to do it, or they are unaware of it? It is because it is a kill and divide thing until this mind goes over us. And unfortunately, we are about 40-something% Muslim and about some percentage Christian. And each of these books, including the traditional believers, does not allow for such stealing. Mm-hmm. And to get this job supervised, not just the cost of the job now, that is already over.
The process of implementation.
The process of implementation, and the number of people who need to come and supervise what you are doing. We need to travel, their logistics, their accommodation, equally consume close the amount that you are paid as a contractor. So if you put a job that is supposed to cost 14 million, it's costing close to about 100 and something million. How do you explain this? Because they have self-interest, self-gratification, corruption. But unfortunately, they are shooting themselves on the leg. Because when you do this, it doesn't go around. People get pushed to the wall. People begin to suffer. They begin to find a way to survive. That's a natural human stuff. And this survival drag people to equally begin to lick the boot of those who have impoverished them. So I think as a matter of fact, I do hope that the incoming government, because actually everything has its peak, it has its anticlimax. People even get tired. Sometimes you eat a particular thing and get tired of everything. So I just wish that I could realize that enough damage has been done and it's time to take a U-turn, make a 360-degree turn and begin to use that same office to make amend. Imagine somebody today coming to say he wants to become the Senate president. Same person, where in this same system had an issue with the Niger Delta Fund. And in the court, it was a drama. This was all tolerated. How could such person, for God's sake, says he wants to become a Senate president. And we're still looking and applauding him and supporting
So by that, are you saying that we are too tolerant of unethical practices?
Our judiciary system needs redemption. When you have the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive, with the executive determining who becomes who and how who becomes who, including the process of election, who makes who becomes who and how becomes who, is determined by just one person.
I just want us to wrap up quickly, but on this one note, so I just have one more question to your time. So, I've spoken with analysts over the years about this issue of governance, cost of governance, and how people emerge and eventually find themselves in public offices. Yeah. Most of them have agreed across board that, look, some of these issues are, in fact, a number of them are embedded in the Constitution. Yeah. So for you to address them from the root, you've got to go back to the Constitution and do thorough amendments. Is that a humongous task?
You see, I wouldn't want to digress, but we are going to something very serious. When you mention the root, there is no problem that has no root cause. There is no situation that wasn't right until something made it become wrong. And you can't get it right until you return back to how it gets wrong. How did the Constitution 1999 emerged? It emerged out of firework. Oh, it's Obasanjo, it's coming. What constitution are we operating on? It's a constitutional conference. And everybody haphazardly, self-interest protection, covering some regional issue that had been patriarchal, that had been fundamental with our foundation, and that came to say it becomes a constitution. And it is said, we, the people of Nigeria, has, without showing where we all agreed and signed on it.
We can't discard these, as they say, you can't throw the baby and the bathwater away. So are we supposed to discard this constitution?
At this moment, I said something earlier. I said, time is constant.
But the people
those who live through time
are dynamic.
And this dynamism is what informs how we want to be ruled and how we should be ruled per time. And leadership is followerships, and leaders determine how do we get it right. But in the case that the followers don't seem to have an understanding of what they even want, the few who lead take advantage of them. And it's called most times the secret. You find out that you'll imagine in the whole world, maybe 94% of all the money made is just made by 1% of the world population. Somewhere, when you bring leadership into perspective, the number of people that control every system, most time are almost always 1% of the total population. If you take it religiously, you find out whoever comes to bring salvation, whether it is in Hinduism, Shintoism, Buddhism, and Christianity and Islam, there's always one person that will turn, that comes out and has been followed, and a structure is built, a belief is meant to be believed. And
from where you're sitting right now, just in 30 seconds, do you see us getting it right with cutting cost of governance going forward?
We don't have a choice. It's either we do it or nature does it for us.
So either way it will get done.
Either way to get done.
I think that's a fine place to wrap it up this morning. Thank you for your time. I've been speaking with Ademu Musa Adams, public affairs commentator. He's been doing a very brilliant work, helping us to understand the dynamics around cost of governance and the burden it places on our shoulders as a country. Then he also went further to talk about how there are specific things we must address quickly to be able to deal with the issue as the very root. That's where we wrap it up on Global Morning here on Global Television. We are in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I'm Uyi Agmofwegbe. Thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.
No, not talk
in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
The only area where Buhari defeats for that statement is only appointment. When you're talking about project, a project is well approached. You need to spell out what does it mean? But if you say appointment, and in the type of appointment, you appoint people you trust. But if you like to man, I'm ready. When our leaders are